What's a Mary Sue? I've heard this a few times, and people either know exactly what it is or they've never heard of it before, depending on where they frequented on the internet. Fact of the matter is that what a Mary Sue is and what a Mary Sue isn't is actually a bit more nuanced than people give it credit for. The common trait is you make a list of things that are Mary Sue traits: multicolored eyes, weird names, sad backstories, lots of romances, super talented, super angsty, blah blah blah, super special, and then they check it off, and if you have like more than 50%, you might be a Mary Sue. I don't like this interpretation. I think this interpretation is a lot of bunk. So what actually is a Mary Sue? Well, you'll get different answers depending on who you ask. This is my personal interpretation, so you should take it as my personal interpretation. A Mary Sue is a character that is an original character introduced into a pre-established setting or a co-created setting and has an unbalanced amount of attention, power, and importance drawn to them. This is especially obvious in fanfiction because you have a character who's taking away attention from the main characters that people usually go to read fanfiction for. So what does that mean? Well, by my definition, it technically means that Mary Sues can't exist in canon settings. No real character can be a Mary Sue, only if it's a setting someone else established. Some people disagree with this, but at the end of the day, we have made an entire genre based on wish fulfillment. There are many books based on wish fulfillment. There's so much schlock out there and really great books out there that are just purely wish fulfillment and have characters who are perfect. And people like them. People eat them up. There is a market for it. And people can have incredibly good plots or incredibly interesting plots or at least incredibly easy to read plots and still have Mary Sues, quotation mark, and still have success and not be objectively bad. So I think it's important to distinguish the fact that if you're going to be talking about Mary Sues, that there's a difference between something that exists in a canon setting and something that exists outside of it. However, as I mentioned, it's not just pre-established settings, but also co-created settings. So when you have someone else writing for a story, there might be an issue. And there's also the fact that LARPs and tabletops tend to exist on a co-created setting, which is where I come in. So first of all, before I want to go, I just want to say that Mary Sues might be seen as bad, but they are sometimes the symptom, not the cause. Sometimes it's not the Mary Sue that's the issue, but the writing around it. Sometimes a character isn't so perfect, but it's the fact that the way the person's writing them to be their mouthpiece, or to get back at someone else, or as their own personal fantasy that is so specific to them that it makes you feel uncomfortable reading it. So keep that in mind. So, in a LARP, how can a Mary Sue exist? Simple. Multiple ways. 1. Someone wants their character to be loved by all, so they try and give them a bunch of traits to be loved by all. These characters tend to be shot down pretty quickly because other LARPers don't care. You try and make, unless you are a good enough actor, in which case, surprise, you're probably no longer a Mary Sue. Sometimes people give them super angsty backstories, which will make them one of the crop, and once again, does not give them enough attention because LARPers don't care. And if they do care, it probably means, once again, you are talented enough to execute it in a way that they do notice. See what I'm getting at here? It's almost like the traits aren't what matter, it's the execution that matters. You'll kind of realize that if you are worrying that your character's a Mary Sue, they're probably not a Mary Sue. The window of opportunity to make a Mary Sue is so narrow that by the time you become self-aware, you're already past it. Once you reach that point, your problems isn't writing a perfect character, it's other issues, making an author's tract. Maybe you don't take into other people's characters into account. Maybe you like to hyperbolize. There's so many other ways to specifically criticize a character that the term Mary Sue just becomes so catch-all and meaningless that you're better off just not using it at all. And anyone who's saying, avoid a Mary Sue, this is the best advice I can give you, probably doesn't know how to write a character very well. In general, while tropes and terms and archetypes are nice and fun to play with and discuss on a theoretical level, once it comes to actually creating a character, you kind of have to put the theory aside and just go to practicality and application. Archetypes are for analyzing trends and for understanding, overarching methods. It's not for the execution. It's not for making a good character. It's for tips and tricks, but not the actual process involved in making an enjoyable and interactable character with an actual backstory and actual depth to them. You can't just go to a checklist and say, well, my name isn't weird, I don't have heterochromia, so clearly my character's great, or, well, I've got 5 flaws and 5 good things, so clearly they balance out. It's not how it works. It's just not how it works at all. So in short, my video on Mary Sues is this. If you worried your character's a Mary Sue, they're not. If you think your friend's character is a Mary Sue, it might be. In which case, find out exactly what's wrong with them. Find out specifically where they fail. And then what you can do is tell them that specific criticism. Instead of saying your character's too much like a Mary Sue, you can say something else like, your character tries to hog all the attention, or you out of character defend your character too much. You seem to put a lot of ego into your character. You really describe your character's beauty a lot. Is that really that important? Blah, blah, blah. If you bring it up to specific pinpoints, it'll actually be legitimate criticism as opposed to the blanket term of your character's a Mary Sue. They're too perfect. Especially if it's a Mary Sue that's the angsty Mary Sue, so they're too imperfect. Surprise! Contradicting terminology. It's fun. Yeah. Also, keep in mind, at least in LARPs and tabletops, the biggest issue that Mary Sues are is that they're a symptom of the worst thing. They're a symptom of a GM not doing their job. A GM needs to tell you no. You can't summon 50 million things as a level 1. You can't, buy an entire nation at a low level. You can barely do that at a high level. The GM needs to tell you when to stop so that you can't have so much stuff that no one else does that it puts you at a different level. On a sheer mechanical level, if this is a level-based system, you should be restricted enough that at least the mechanical level, you can't be that Mary Sue, because a defining trait is they are better than everyone. The leveling system should be put in such a way that that can't happen. And if it does happen, then the GM's not doing their job. Maybe they're buying a bunch of stuff and saying it does stuff that it doesn't do. Maybe they, write a bunch of stories that make a bunch of canon, making them more special. It's the GM's job to monitor that. And if the GM's not doing their job, then the problem isn't this one person who's making their little fantasy that's encroaching on everyone else's fantasy. It's the GM who doesn't have the guts to say no. And to a certain extent, some wish fulfillment is alright. We all expect it. But you have to make sure that it comes within a limit. You take your lumps and you take your high points. It has to be fun for everyone. No character exists in a vacuum. They can't exist in a happy world if it means everyone else is suffering. So, basically, if the GM is the reason that this is happening, then, yeah. The issue's not the Mary Sue. The issue's the GM. And even then, yes, you can talk to the person, but it's not don't make perfect characters. It's stop trying to abuse the system. Rules are in place for a reason. Specific line of dialogue here about what they specifically did in the specific context. Also, the final point to make is that, in leveling up systems at least, characters are eventually going to get perfect. Maybe not entirely, but they'll be higher level. They'll get more skills. They'll be tougher. It is expected. So, in short, if you're worried, you're fine. If someone tries to give you the list, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. And if you think there is an issue, try and find the specificity of the issue and address it like that. And 4, if there is someone you know who it seems like they are making a Mary Sue, talk to them. Don't even bring it up. Don't even, bring up what they're doing. Don't even disagree with them. Ask them questions. Why is your character so special? Your character does this? Well, could other people do this? Oh, well, what were you thinking when you did this? Ask them questions to make them evaluate what they're doing and supply suggestions that make it more interesting and nuanced. The best thing you can do to someone who doesn't write characters well is supply them with information that they can use to better their writing. Character creation is hard and easy at the same time, and terminology is used for writing trends and analyzing trends, not for making the perfect character. And Mary Sue kind of is part of that. So, write the best character you can, just not too great. Happy LARPing.